be honored if you would join us.
Hello everyone, this is 17 Stages of Story, and you're watching the hero's journey breakdown for The Empire Strikes Back. Like I did with Star Wars, I'll be assuming that everyone here is already familiar with Empire, which means you already know that Empire features two separate story arcs, two journeys that break apart in the first act and come back together in Act 3. We'll be tracking both. As usual, we'll get into the different notes being played at any one time, but I'll only be tracking the golden path. Or in this case, the golden path for each story arc. This means that for any given timestamp, I'll be choosing just one root note, one dominant stage of the hero's journey. Now, one last thing before we get started. The purpose of these breakdowns is not to explain what the hero's journey is, but to show how different storytellers apply it. If you're looking for an introduction, I suggest starting with What is the Hero's Journey, which is linked in the description below. With all that said, let's dive in. Our story begins with Luke Skywalker in his ordinary world. It's a routine scouting mission, setting up sensors at the perimeter of the Rebellion's new hidden base on Hoth. It's deathly cold, but boring, routine, nothing out of the... And we're off. The call to adventure sequence begins with Luke being ambushed by the Wampa. Back at Echo Base, Han and Leia call each other to their shared adventure, which is their love story. She calls him to stay, and he calls her to be honest about her feelings.
Come on! You want me to stay because of the way you feel about me?
Yes! You're a great help to us. You're a natural leader.
No! That's not it. Come on.
Both of them have baggage that keeps them from meeting in the middle, so the call very quickly turns into refusal of the call.
Fredo's gonna leave without giving you a goodbye kiss?
I just assumed he's a Wookiee.
I can arrange that. You can use a good kiss!
Han is trying to leave as fast as humanly possible when the universe nudges him back on the path of adventure.
Princess Leia is wondering about Master Luke. He hasn't come back yet. She doesn't know where he is.
I don't know where he is.
Nobody knows where he is.
This is the beginning of his supernatural aid sequence. The next time we see Luke, he's hanging upside down in the Wampa's cave. Now, we don't know exactly what Luke might have been doing between the movies to develop his force powers, but he does something revealing here. First, he stretches out his arm like he's trying to reach the lightsaber. Or he might be trying to use the force by physically straining his body. Whatever he's doing, he realizes that it's not going to work. His only chance is to harness his chi. Now, if you zoom out to look at the hero's journey across the entire trilogy, this feels a lot like Luke's belly of the whale. Star Wars sees Luke answer the call to adventure, receive supernatural aid, and cross the first threshold of joining the rebellion and committing to his Jedi training. So it makes sense that Empire would start by putting Luke into the belly of the whale at the same time as he's being called to his next adventure. In this case, Luke is pulled down into an enclosed space where he's at risk of being eaten and is forced to adapt psychologically or die. In fact, this whole movie has a strong belly of the whale motif, so we'll see this a few more times. Luke is also hanging upside down, another indicator of psychological disorientation and the pain that goes along with it. The scene also ends the same as Luke's first belly of the whale experience in Star Wars, with Luke's attacker losing an arm. Dismemberment isn't unique to belly of the whale, but it's often used to symbolize being painfully cut away from one mode of being and entering another. This time, it's Luke who saves himself, so hey, progress. But this encounter has left him in bad shape. Hovering on the edge of life and death, Luke has his first vision of Ben Kenobi in corporeal form. It's not made exactly clear, but this might be happening only because Luke achieved a deeper connection with the Force back in the Wampa's cave. In any case, he gives Luke his next goal: find Yoda, become a Jedi. This immediately gives way to Luke's refusal of the call sequence, although there's a lot of minor tit-for-tat back and forth with supernatural aid. First, Han Solo appears out of the darkness, framed in the silhouette of Ben Kenobi, almost as if the Force led him there, literal supernatural aid. Then, Luke blacks out, obviously interfering with his ability to answer the call. Then, Han's tauntaun freezes before it even reaches the first marker. Here, Han does something unusual and clever to help keep Luke warm and alive, opening the tauntaun's belly and stuffing Luke inside the carcass. This, again, is belly of the whale imagery. But now, both of them will need a little supernatural aid for their respective adventures to continue. So that's why I'm going to mark Luke's major supernatural aid stage as beginning with the arrival of Rogue 2, who escorts both our heroes back to base. And if you still doubt that we're in some kind of trilogy-level belly of the whale sequence, here's Luke in a baby diaper with an umbilical cord being reborn from a symbolic womb. Next, Han's departure is interrupted again by the Imperial probe droid, funneling him toward his adventure with Leia.
I didn't hit it that hard. Must have had a self-destruct.
An Imperial probe droid.
It's a good bet the Empire knows we're here.
The probe droid steps into the archetypal role of the herald, the messenger, someone whose appearance lets you know that something even bigger is coming.
You are going to be visited by 3 ghosts.
Ooh, 3 ghosts.
3 ghosts, Frank.
Strangely enough, this scene also marks the beginning of Luke's crossing the first threshold. Even though Luke isn't directly involved, this is the setup, or at least a kind of prologue to the events that block Luke's entry into the extraordinary world. Notice, though, that in this scene the threshold is inverted. Something unwanted from the extraordinary world has crossed the border of our hero's ordinary world, and our heroes take on the role of threshold guardians. The first threshold sequence moves into the conflict phase as Luke leads Rogue Squadron against the Imperial walkers on the North Ridge. It's an unusually long first threshold sequence. Why? It's not just because we need to see both story arcs progress in parallel. It's also because, at the trilogy level, it moves and feels like a road of trials. Luke has been psychologically reoriented and must now do the work of reaching his goal. It's important that we see him survive just by the skin of his teeth and do something kind of badass, arguably with the help of the Force, or at the very least, his lightsaber. Meanwhile, Han is trying to escape Echo Base. He's still trying to refuse the call to abandon Leia and the rebellion. Even as the room shakes under the Imperial assault, Han and Leia are still trying to one-up each other over who cares less about their relationship.
Why are you still here?
Heard the command center just hit.
You got your clearance to leave.
Don't worry, I'll leave.
His supernatural aid sequence reaches its climax when the universe finally gives up on subtle nudges.
Transport, this is Solo. Better take off. I can't get to you. I'll get her out on the Falcon. Come on.
There's also a nice little stinger at the end, with the malfunctioning Falcon coming back to life just in time to escape the hangar. At the same time, Luke escapes Hoth in his X-Wing, and his first crossing continues with R2 doing a little threshold guarding.
That's alright. I'd like to keep it on manual control for a while.
Han and Leia are now just beginning their first threshold sequence. The Falcon's hyperdrive fails, and they plunge into the asteroid field where they shake their pursuers. The scene wraps up when they duck into a cave inside one of the bigger asteroids. Luke's first threshold is also just about to finish up. He passes through a turbulent physical barrier in the form of Dagobah's atmosphere, and boom, he splashes down in the swamp. His belly of the whale sequence begins, and oh, would you look at that? R2 gets swallowed up and spit out by a large, water-dwelling creature. What are the odds? Luke acknowledges that he's not in Kansas anymore, but he doesn't exactly learn from it or properly adapt to it.
It's like something out of a dream, or I don't know. Maybe I'm just going crazy.
Han and Leia also begin their own belly of the whale in their next scene. They've been thrown together by fate, and here they're literally thrown together by the rocking of the ship. But they both revert to their usual defense mechanisms.
Let go, please.
Don't get excited.
Captain, being held by you isn't quite enough to get me excited.
Sorry, sweetheart. I haven't got time for anything else.
Back on Dagobah, Luke's road of trials begins, unbeknownst to him, when Yoda arrives and pretends to be an eccentric old coot.
Hey! It's my dinner!
This raises an important detail about how to identify stages of the hero's journey. Should we label them according to where the hero thinks he is, or where he actually is, according to the storyteller? Long story short, I usually default to the latter method. The hero is where the storyteller says he is. Han and Leia also make a kind of soft transition to their road of trials. Like the training scene on the Falcon in Star Wars, Belly of the Whale and Road of Trials often blend together in ways that are difficult to fully separate. I think it feels like both here because Han is working directly toward his goal, which is the Road of Trials. But his goal is to get Leia to admit her feelings for him, and that's psychological reorientation, Belly of the Whale. Han's initial effort to establish honest communication quickly turns to a more standard seduction.
Come on, admit it. Sometimes you think I'm all right.
Occasionally, maybe, when you aren't acting like a scoundrel.
He wants her to be real with him, but he won't be real with her in return. And on the flip side of that coin, Leia is still nitpicking everything Han says. She's literally in mid-argument when he kisses her.
Nice, man.
Very nice.
A moment that Leia runs away from when they're interrupted by 3PO. That's Han's meeting with the goddess. He gets to see the outcome of his efforts. She's still stuck in her belly of the whale. It's a partial success at best. Not to be outpaced, Luke's road of trials ends in failure when Yoda reveals himself.
I cannot teach him. The boy has no patience.
This is Luke's meeting with the goddess, and it only works out for him because Ben Kenobi intervenes.
You are reckless.
So was I, if you remember.
There's even a little foreshadowing that Luke's woman as the temptress phase is about to begin.
I'm not afraid.
You will be. You will be.
We cut back to Han and Leia, who pull one stage ahead, going into their woman as the temptress stage when they realize that the Falcon has been inside the belly of a giant space whale. Now it's Luke's turn. His goddess stage becomes woman as the temptress during his first training scene with Yoda. Luke appears able to keep up with the physical training, but can't seem to contend with the more abstract philosophy.
But tell me why I can't.
No, there is no why. Nothing more will I teach you today.
But this relatively small failure quickly gives way to atonement with the Father during his ordeal in the cave. An ordeal he fails. And I don't just mean that he approaches the problem the wrong way and gets a bad outcome. That's par for the course. The real failure during the atonement stage is the hero's refusal to admit that his best isn't good enough, which is explicitly stated a little later when Luke argues with Yoda about what he should do.
The cave. Remember your failure at the cave.
But I've learned so much since then. Master Yoda, I promise to return and finish what I've begun. You have my word.
Han and Leia, on the other hand, have a much longer woman as the temptress sequence. First they try, again, to make the jump into hyperspace. When they can't, Han comes up with a pretty incredible solution on very short notice, clinging to the hull of a Star Destroyer and powering down, effectively making them invisible to the Empire's sensors. It's enough to outwit the Empire, but not the like-minded bounty hunter on his tail. Luke, meanwhile, keeps moving right along. Here he is, upside down for the second time. After the cave, Luke's X-Wing sinks deeper into the swamp. Yoda uses this teachable moment as an opportunity to inspire a positive apotheosis, a deeper connection with the Force.
Do or do not. There is no try.
But Luke fails again. 3 times, in fact. First, when he can't lift his ship. Second, when he sulks away after Yoda's speech.
You want the impossible.
And finally, even when he sees Yoda raise his ship from the swamp, he doesn't learn what he's meant to learn.
I don't believe it.
That is why you fail.
When Luke finally reaches that next level of connection, it's because he has a vision of his friends in pain. A vision that's been deliberately planted by Darth Vader as bait in a trap. Remember, apotheosis is a deep insight or a kind of divine intervention that causes the hero to realize that he's been playing the wrong game. So this scene is a continuation of Luke's apotheosis sequence. But it's a negative apotheosis, an inverted apotheosis intended to lead the hero onto the wrong path. While all this is happening, Han and Leia have reached Bespin. It appears to be a safe haven, but the audience gets a heads up that something's not right when 3PO gets blasted into a million pieces. This is a deepening of the Temptress stage. When we return to Dagobah, we see that Luke has taken the bait. This takes us directly from his inverted apotheosis to refusal of the return, completely bypassing Luke's ultimate boon stage. He puts his original boon, becoming a Jedi, in serious jeopardy, to leave his extraordinary world of Jedi training in pursuit of a new goal, saving his friends. In this case, the refusal is inverted. The hero is eager to return, so it's Yoda and Ben Kenobi who object.
Only a fully trained Jedi Knight, with the Force as his ally, will conquer Vader and his Emperor.
Now, before we leave Dagobah, let's zoom out and look at where Luke is across the entire trilogy. On that macro level, Luke's training sequence fits the bill of woman as the temptress. He fails, gets up, dusts himself off, and tries again. He goes through atonement and fails. Apotheosis, fails. Boon, skipped. But it's all happening in the relative safety of a training environment where the consequences aren't irreversible. That's what makes it more like woman as the temptress. But those consequences can and will become real and final when he leaves the training environment, which he's about to do. But now we go back to Han and Leia, who are still working their way through the temptress phase.
Oh, what a mess. Chewie, you think you can repair him?
But at last, Lando leads our heroes to their atonement with the Father. And this time, Han doesn't have some clever solution up his sleeve.
We would be honored if you would join us.
His best isn't good enough. Now, apotheosis usually comes next, and we do get a kind of ironic reversal here. Han's atonement stage is directly linked to Luke's apotheosis. Vader tortures Han to create the disturbance in the Force that Luke has already picked up on and responded to. But you know who does start to think he's been playing the wrong game? Lando. And that actually tracks really well. He kind of got jumped into the game, into the journey at atonement with the Father. Darth Vader seems to have that effect on people.
Lord Vader, what about Leia and the Wookiee?
They must never again leave this city.
That was never a condition of our agreement, nor was giving hand to this bounty hunter.
Perhaps you think you're being treated unfairly?
No.
Good. It would be unfortunate if I had to leave the garrison here.
This deal is getting worse all the time.
So I'll call this the setup of an apotheosis stage that pays off a little too late to help Han. But you know what Han does get before going into carbon freeze? He gets his ultimate boon.
I love you.
I know.
Most hardcore Star Wars fans know how Harrison Ford changed Han Solo's original reply, "I love you too." And what a miracle, because it aligns perfectly with his refusal of the return. Maybe it's just a happy accident, but we all know that being frozen means being closed off from your emotions. And only then, after it's too late, does Lando's apotheosis resolve.
Arisian, take the princess and the Wookiee to my ship.
You said they'd be left in the city under my supervision.
I am altering the deal. Pray I don't alter it any further.
You can see him decide right here that he's going to triple-cross the Empire. After all of this, Luke finally arrives at Cloud City, still thinking he's chasing the boon, and like a carrot on a stick, there it goes. But it's still not the boon stage. It's the setup for the magic flight, and now the duel is on. With Han out of commission, the focus shifts to Leia and Lando, who turn the tables on the Imperials. This is a case of the rescue from without coming before the magic flight. This doesn't happen too often, but sometimes a story is structured in a way where the hero, in this case Leia, needs to receive their miracle first, then the final conflict begins. They race to the east platform to save Han, but thanks in large part to Lando's delayed apotheosis, they arrive too late to save him. They're just one miracle short. That's when more stormtroopers show up to kick off their crossing the return threshold. Alright, let's check in with Luke. First, he avoids getting frozen. Point for Luke.
Impressive.
Next, we get more imagery of being swallowed. Even when I was a kid, I noticed that the window frame looked like a spider's web. Now, a web isn't a cave, but it's still the center of the monster's lair where the hero runs the risk of being eaten. And once again, Luke is chewed up and spit out. The magic flight reaches its climax when Luke loses the duel. He will get a rescue, but not yet. Instead, we circle back to the stages that Luke has failed. Like we saw in the introductory series, with Happy Gilmore circling back to Belly of the Whale after being initially skipped, Empire boomerangs back to a far more painful atonement with the Father and one of the most famous apotheoses in movie history.
No, I am your father.
But I'm not going to mark those on the golden path for Empire, because that's where we're at on the trilogy level. Finally, Luke understands that he's been playing the wrong game and makes the honorable decision to throw himself into the abyss rather than join Darth Vader. His rescue from without begins when he's pulled into an exhaust pipe, which was not his plan. But he's ejected from the system and he falls out the bottom of the city. He's gone down the monster's throat, been digested in its belly, and now, finally, he's come out the other end. Here, he hangs upside down for the fourth and final time. In fact, Luke is upside down every time we see him do something new with the Force. In this case, he contacts Leia and guides her to him, completing his rescue from without. Our heroes are reunited and they cross the return threshold together, receiving a second rescue from without from R2-D2.
You did it!
They rejoin the rebel forces, now a ragtag fugitive fleet. Luke's master of the two worlds is symbolized by his mechanical hand. He's returned to the ordinary world with the difficult truth of his lineage, a permanent reminder of his failure, and a warning that he may yet turn out like his father. Leia has returned with a reformed Lando, now dressed like Han, and a glimmer of hope that all is not yet lost. As with the first film, Luke is still not a Jedi, and the Empire hasn't been defeated, but a new equilibrium has been established. The rebellion has been rocked back on its heels, the Empire is riding high, and Luke's next steps toward his goal will be informed by the sobering lessons he's learned. Here, freedom to live is dramatized through the last shot, mirroring the group portrait of the awards ceremony. Some sources say the celestial object in the distance is a forming star. Others say it's their home galaxy, and the rebellion has skulked off to lick their wounds. Whatever the case, it's something bright and beautiful, but also far, far away. So that's The Empire Strikes Back. It's filled with archetypal symbols that speak to us at that level of dream logic. It really gets a lot done in 2 hours. 2 complete journeys that break apart and come back together while remaining thematically in sync. If you got something out of this video, I hope you'll like, comment, subscribe, and share. Return of the Jedi is the next breakdown on the calendar, so stay tuned. This was the 17 stages of story in The Empire Strikes Back. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.